The internet breaks.
Yeah, probably. That's my luck. Mirror your video. We're live.
Yep.
Hi, Ma. Oh, Jiminy Crickets.
Yeah, pretty much. Hello, everybody out there. Oh. All right. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing?
Mike, I don't know if it's just me or not, but I can just barely hear you.
Of course. Is that any better?
Yes, it is.
Much better.
Well, that's good. At least we can have a small success. Anyway, so welcome to episode 213 of Reloading Podcast here on the Firearms Radio Network. Just, seems like the harder we work to try and get things to be good, the more it takes a crap. So I don't know if episode 212 is going to ever air, because unfortunately the digital recording didn't get set because of all the problems I had last week. So yeah. As everybody knows, the YouTube video was absolute crap, and it didn't clean up at all. I was hoping that maybe when it actually posted, it would be better, but no, still crap. So, yeah. So 212.
It's because I didn't make it.
There you go. So how's everybody doing?
Outstanding.
Oh, that's good. At least somebody's doing well.
I'm doing better.
That's good.
I literally just walked in from the door from work.
Don't you do a Matter of Facts podcast on Tuesday nights, Phil?
No, we usually record on Monday, but my co-host had a training class Monday evening, so we actually had to record Sunday. Kind of spur of the moment.
Excuse me.
But yeah, we actually started what I thought was going to be like a 10-minute conversation about revolvers or compact frame revolvers as backup guns or deep concealment guns, and an hour and 10 minutes later we finally finished. So we went down that rabbit hole.
You're going to talk about revolvers versus pistols, and you try to do it in 10 minutes?
We didn't even really set out to talk revolvers versus semi-autos. I was more looking at it from the perspective of, excuse me, if we're looking at that class of firearm, a really super compact firearm you'd use for like an ankle holster, deep concealment gun, something like that, what are the virtues of a compact revolver that makes that a more preferable choice, was kind of my perspective.
Well, we don't need to get on that rabbit hole now. I almost started it, and it's like, no, Jim, this is a reloading podcast.
Yes. But as it pertains to reloading, since I've now begun to shoot up a bunch of old 38 Special I've reloaded for my wife a year or two ago, I've begun to realize that I underloaded that ammunition significantly to the point where I'm not even getting full powder burn. Like 10, 15 rounds, and I've got unburnt flakes of powder all throughout the gun.
So, okay, question. Check your records if you don't mind. but unless you know it's something physical.
off the top of my head.
What I was going to say, what was your load? You know,
4.8 grains of Hodgson Universal loaded to. I can look up the length. I mean, I got the load data right here on my phone. But I think the problem there is that 4.8 grains is a start load, and I just never felt the need to push the powder any harder because that was just going to be more recoil for my wife. And she never really shot enough of it for us to do any load tuning on it. And now I'm realizing that the load is just, frankly, it's too light. I'm not getting full burn on the powder.
well, understand this, and don't forget, you as a semi-experienced reloader know this already. The more powder you put in, the more recoil she's going to have to endure.
Except
Which means, what I'm trying to say is, you'll have to take and help her with the training regimen, build some sort of training regimen, so she can toughen up her hands, as it were.
yeah, well, that revolver's been replaced by a Shield 9mm in her case. So this has now become one of my carry guns. And I'm not recoil sensitive.
Yeah,
So I suspect after I shoot up this old lot of ammo, because I'm not going to pull the bullets out, I'm going to load it just about to plus P levels. Because that's what I'm going to shoot out of the gun. Might as well train at full power.
just out of curiosity, exactly what sort of 38 is it?
It's a 642 Airweight Smith & Wesson.
Ooh, airway. It's perfect ankle gun.
Yeah, I actually spent some time walking around the house with it the other day in an ankle holster. It's odd to feel that weight on the ankle, but I mean, it loaded with the ankle holster is just over a pound, so it's not objectionable.
Have you changed the stocks on it, or are they factory stocks?
Factory stocks. I honestly, if I were going to exclusively ankle carry the gun, I might end up changing those to something that gives me a little bit more purchase. But since I'm also going to IWB the gun, I kind of like the stocks. I mean, I can get my hand on them and get a good grip, but they are very small.
What I was going to strongly recommend is you look at Pacmar stock rubber replacement stocks.
Do they cover the back strap?
I do not know.
Because that's like the one. That'd be my one concern with this 642 is that it has an exposed back strap as delivered from the factory.
Absolutely.
So no matter how cushy of a set of stocks you put on the gun, if you've got aluminum alloy beating you in the palm, it ain't gonna help much.
Nope. You're right.
But this is it's gonna be another caliber for me to reload. I mean, I reloaded a bunch of 38 Special with the intention of being as light shooting as was practical, and now that the gun's coming into my hands, I'm gonna be loading to see how badly I can hurt my feelings.
Well, and in my case, my favorite revolver is my Dan Wesson 357, but it doesn't have the normal back strap and front strap and all that trash. It has a little stub sticking out, little finger sticking out of the bottom of the framework, and the Pacmar grips work really well for that.
Sounds like the Tang safety on or the Tang grip on a Ruger.
No, this is not a full grip. It's just a little finger that sticks down, and the finger that sticks down, I have to put a socket head cap screw up into that, and just one screw holds the whole thing together.
No, that's at least how my GP100 is. The metal portion that extends down into the grip is only like a 1/2 inch in diameter.
Right.
So you've got 3/8 of an inch of rubber all the way around the Tang. I mean, there are good reasons why I keep recommending a GP100 for a person's first big revolver.
You betcha. And GP100 2-inch barrel would be a nice one on the ankle too, except it's a little heavier.
I think I'd honestly prefer an SP101 if I were going to go that route. I mean, you lose one round of capacity, which also gives you a little bit less weight. But the SP101 is it's a downsized GP100. It's an intermediate step between a GP100 and like an LCR. But for my money, and it's like I've said before, if I'm gonna carry anything bigger than this little J frame, I'm gonna go straight to a double stack 9mm. Dress around it, suck it up, deal with it.
Hey, we went down that rabbit hole. We need to get out of it.
Yes. Point remains, I will be doing a lot of loading for a 38 special in the near future.
Very good. Very good. Make sure you soup them up.
Yep, as long as I can keep the gun in one piece.
Well, for that goes without saying.
That's kind of overrated. They look cool.
No, not when it's my fingers and eyeballs, Mike.
So, Jason, what you been doing?
Jason's taking a break.
All right.
His wife's
Pick me,
beating him.
pick me.
Did you reload?
Well,
Oh,
I came close.
what's close?
I finished those crazy shells that I've been building.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. But in the midst of rearranging a couple things, I found, and I won't say how much, but I found some of my ammo. I found the 38, and I'm sorry, 357. I found 40, and I found 45 ACP. I've got fodder for 3 guns.
No.
And actually 4. I've got an 1894 that could that would dearly love to eat some 357 loads.
Nice. Just find somewhere to go shoot it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the next issue. There happens to be a range not too awfully far from where I work. It's actually along my commute. And if I join there for a year, I can go in unlimited. Go in after work and have all the fun I want till dark.
Nice. I was just looking at what temperature it is in the garage. It's high. 'Cause it sucks. But I can't run a fan because then everybody hears the fan. And then when I run it through Levelator, it comes out as a giant. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so. Anyway. But, nope, I haven't done squat because last week was Dane County 4-H Fair Week.
Mike, didn't you get your boys into shooting through 4-H?
But we don't do that at the fair because liberals.
Oh, yeah.
Gunners, not necessarily liberals, because there's lots of liberals out there that do own firearms. So, but yeah, no, we can't do that at the fair because of anti-gunners. So we have to do that beforehand at different ranges. That was done well before. But tonight, we're going to start the cartridge corner.
Nice.
So, and we're going to start off with arguably the greatest cartridge in the history of the world.
This is going to be good.
6.5 Creedmoor.
22 rimfire?
9mm Parabellum.
30-06 Springfield.
Oh.
Yay.
Do we get to talk about 8mm Mauser while we're there? Because, I mean, they're cousins.
Well, they are.
One inspired the other.
And seeing as how the Mauser actually is the 1903 brain fart.
Springfield.
1903 rifle that everybody loves and everybody wants to get their hands on is actually so much of a copy of the original, the 1895 Mauser.
Yep.
Germany actually sued the United States over it and won.
Uh-huh.
So that, so basically, the 30-06 Springfield or 30-06, if you want to do the stupid metric, is 7.62 by 63, and it's also known as the 30 Government 06 by Winchester. So it's actually born out of a couple of different cartridges. Well, there's still some argument over that, but it is what they call rimless. Even though, yes, there is a rim on it, there actually isn't a rim per se, like the 8mm or the 303 Enfield rounds would have, or previous cartridges, or like 30-30. So in the early 1890s, the U.S. military finally decided, the smokeless powder might be a good thing. And so their first smokeless cartridge was the 30-40 Krag. And it used a 220 grain round nose bullet. So around 1901, is military, they decided that they wanted to go rimless, and they wanted to do it for a Mauser action with a box magazine. Yes, that's right. So that's where they got the idea to actually rip off the whole Mauser thing. So it led to, in 1903, the 30-03 used the same 220 grain round nose bullet as the Krag, and it had a muzzle velocity of 2,300 feet per second. The problem was many of the European militaries were going with a lighter weight bullet and higher velocity with a pointed Spitzer bullet instead of a round nose. Excuse me. So, in what kind of the history of this is kind of important, because you get to kind of see where it kind of came out of because of all the other stuff that was going on at the time. So the 30-40 Krag wasn't exactly all that it was cracked up to be. That's why they started developing a newer cartridge. And they wanted to go rimless because like stripper grips anyway. So, you have, originally you had the 7mm Mauser, which is 6 point something or other by 56 or something. I don't know. And then you had France in 1898 came up with the 8mm Lebel with 198 grain. And that was the first cartridge that used a boat tail on the bullet. 1903, the 8mm Mauser, as we now know it, was born, which is technically 7.92 by 57. But everybody calls it an 8mm. And that was 153 grain. And then after both the 30-03 and the 30-06 come into service, you get the 7.62 by 54R from Russia, 1908. And then finally Britain comes rolling along with the 3 in 1910. So, but even against the German Mauser and yes, the French Lebel, the 30-03 cartridge was horribly underpowered, horribly under energy. So they figured out they better come up with something better. And what they did is they took the existing 30-03 case, because it was rimless already. They modified it to have a slightly shorter neck, and then to fire a Spitzer flat base 150 grain bullet that moved quite a bit better. It was at 2,700 feet per second, and more importantly, the muzzle energy was 24-29. Now, supposedly, they claimed this thing had a maximum range of 4,700 yards, which isn't realistic. No. But you know how that is. They want to make it seem better than it was. And
It might not to interrupt, but it might also be worth pointing out, is that point target or volley? Because that's almost believable for volley fire.
it doesn't say. Given the capabilities at that time, I don't even think volley fire was possible. Just because of the powders available and everything. So, what happened is basically it was just a redesign, but because it was a redesign, they renamed the whole thing. And I haven't seen her. Pretty much everything that was ever made in a 3003 was rechambered for the 30-06. If you can find something with a 3003, it's a pretty huge collector value, especially for the 1903 Springfield rifle. So what happened is when they estimated it, they were doing 1,800-yard tests, and then how they came up with that absurd number was they were estimating extreme range, but yeah, they were kind of wrong. And they didn't figure that out though until World War One. So some 10 years later, they finally figured out. Went, oops. So the actual maximum range was 3,300 to 3,400 yards. Basically, what that means is even firing at volley or on an arc, that was when it accidentally just completely ran out of steam. And it would just basically fall to the ground. Now, it didn't really fall to the ground, but what happens is it gets so unstable, it starts tumbling and just loses all forward momentum. As a result, this was the standard cartridge for more than 40 years. Probably basically until the M14 came around with a 308. You're talking the standard battle cartridge for the United States Army. And then during World War II, they kind of, here in 26, they did some testing. And what happens is they found out about the 75x55 Swede or Swiss, and kind of were playing around and then kind of got jealous. So they started coming up with a new powder, and then they changed the bullet design and they created the 30 caliber M1 ball cartridge, which was loaded with the improved military rifle powder, IMR, and a 174 grain bullet with a 9-degree boat tail and an ogive of 7. Caliber's nose cone that had a higher ballistic coefficient of roughly 0.494. That's the G1 ballistic coefficient scale. So it achieved a muzzle velocity of 2647 and a muzzle energy of 2675. The nice thing is it reduced air resistance in flight, so that meant it wasn't losing as much speed, hence the higher ballistic coefficient. And they came up with a gilding metal jacket for it to eliminate metal fouling that plagued the earlier cartridges. So that was kind of the addition that sealed the deal and made it the cartridge that was going to stay around. There was lots of different guns that have been chambered for it over the years. You're all the way from the 1903 Springfield. When we were making Enfields here during World War I, those were chambered in a 30-06. Of course, the iconic M1 Garand and its competitor, the Johnson, and then, of course, the bar. And even if you've ever gotten to fire a semi-auto bar like I have, it is a ball. It makes firing an M1 Garand seem like child's play, just because it's so much heavier, but it's just so much fun because with a Garand, you can feel it. With a bar, you pull that trigger and it feels like you're shooting something really light. It's kind of fun. So there's lots of different things, but so kind of different things. Yes, it's actually been in quite a few different lever actions, including the very first was a Model 1895 Winchester. So it was that was the very first commercially produced sporting rifle chambered in 30-06. So who'd have thought that the lever action was the first one? 1903 also saw the refit of the M1900 Gatling guns to 30 Army, or from 30 Army to 30-03, and then later 30-06. So, unfortunately, the Gatling guns were declared obsolete by the Army in 1911 after 45 years of service. Kind of ironic when you think about it. The nicest thing about the 30-06 is it's not a true Magnum. It's not. It is an amazing cartridge, and one of the reasons I think it's one of the best ever is it's so versatile. You could do everything from 55 grain all the way up to, I think they have a 240 grain bullet now for it. And, there's a whole range in between of different loads for different things. So the 55 grain is lethal on varmints. Nobody commercially makes them anymore, but Remington did make what they called the Springfield Accelerator. And basically it was a 55 grain bullet in a sabot in a regular 30-06. You can still get the sabots and load them yourself. If you want to kind of see some of that, go to LFD Research. Matt and Matt have loaded up quite a few different things in the sabots, just having some fun. And definitely worth checking out. Now, one of the nicest things with that variance is not only do you have all the different bullet weights you can do, but there's a different range of powders that fit for the cartridge. There's a difference in all these different things you can do with it, that it's really versatile. So kind of really amazing with what all you can do to it. So now some of the other options, they had the first real armor piercing was what they called the M2, and basically it was a heavier bullet. And I'm looking to see if it doesn't really give what it was made of. So the nicest thing I like about the Odd 6 is you have such a variance, but also the fact that even when you're loading really nice hot stuff, it's not a shoulder killer. So it's just amazing with all the different things. And there's all these different militaries around the world that have used them. So it's a pretty amazing thing. If you've never shot one, I recommend you do, even if it's just a Garand.
Mike, you say it's not a shoulder killer. You've never fired no 383, have you? With a steel butt plate?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I fired it out of a Remington 710, which was a plastic gun.
Yeah.
And that still wasn't a shoulder killer.
Yep.
So, I also don't think that 8mm Mausers are shoulder killers either, and a lot of people do. So, but I guarantee you that if I hand you a 300 Win Mag and I hand you a 30-06 and tell you have to shoot one of them all day, you're probably going to choose the 30-06 time and time and time again.
I actually tend to think that my 308 bolt gun hits harder than my wife's 30-06 semi-auto.
Well, yeah, semi-autos naturally absorb some of it.
Yeah, just the bolt and the springs and everything moving. Mm-hmm. It's softer on the shoulder. All things relative, though.
Right.
Interesting tidbit. That is to say, the 308 Winchester cartridge, also known as 7.62 NATO. The parent cartridge for that is not the 30-06, even though you can make 30-06 cartridges into 308 brass. It was the 250 Savage.
Why are you spoiling my fun for when we do 308?
Everybody will forget by then. It'll be fine.
Well, I wasn't trying to spoil your fun.
Damn it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get it. You'll get it.
So that's the cartridge corner for this week. We could do an entire episode on 30-06. We could talk about different bullet weights that you would use, what you would use them for, all the different tops you do and stuff like that. But
before we move on from 30-06, Kyle Martin in the chat has a question.
Yeah.
His question was, What does 30-06 have over 308 other than a little more power?
Honestly, that's about it. It's a little more power, so it's a little more speed. Well, not necessarily, but more importantly, it's muzzle velocity, which then translates into less drop down range. So that's kind of the big thing. But it's not a lot, especially if you're hot loading your 308s and you're using factory.
Yeah, I've heard the question asked before, and I always kind of hate to answer it because, other than a little more power, you could take almost any two cartridges and say one has more power than the other. I mean, a little more power is a little more power. That's why there's 100 different cartridges in your local reloading manual and not just 5.
Yeah.
They all do something a little bit differently.
So one thing that everybody may not know is you cannot load your standard book loads and run them in a M1 Garand unless you change some things. So, yes, the M1 Garand is a semi-auto. However, the op rod or operating rod, which is what the bolt slides back and forth on, isn't designed to handle as much abuse as your modern 30-06 loads generate. Just like most other cartridges, the better powder increases performance, which increases everything else. So there are still companies that factory load ammo specifically for the M1 Garand. And then there's also all sorts of information out there on downloading for your 30-06 for the M1 Garand. So just remember that if you're a Garand nut and you're looking to hand load, be paying attention. If you want the specs on it, COAL, cartridge overall length, or COL, cartridge overall length, however you want to call it, is spec'd at 3.340 inches. Your neck diameter inside is 0.3397. Your overall length on brass is 2.494. It is a 17-degree shoulder. It is 0.441 where the neck meets the shoulder. And then at the head of the case, it's 0.473. So that's the specs on it. And those are SAAMI specs, so your mileage may vary on what you're loading it to and what you're cutting it to, but that's what SAAMI specs are. Second up is a question from Winfred, who's also one of the Patreons. Hello, Reloading Podcast. I don't remember if this was asked before. I'm planning to reload the 308 for a bolt action. For trimmers that reference the shoulder, do I trim before or after bumping the shoulder? I think afterward would make more sense. Or is this method of trimming not recommended with shoulder bumping? Also, do I trim before or after setting neck tension? Can trimming noticeably affect the neck tension after it's been set? Thanks, Winfred. Jim, do you bump shoulders back on the stuff you're trimming with the world's finest trimmer? Hello?
Jim, you're muted.
Jim's muted and so is Jason.
Sorry. No, I use my WFT for 223.
Okay.
And I don't set the shoulders back so I can use the WFT. I set the shoulders back as a matter of routine because most of my 223 ammo goes into the ammo eaters. The two semi-automatic rifles that I have that run 223, Mini 14 and AR-15. And the Mark 12, I'm sorry, the Savage Model 12 that I have, I treat it like a bolt gun ammunition. And so that brass doesn't generally go through the, in fact, it never goes through the semi-autos. Let me read the question again. Should I trim before or after the bumping the shoulder? I agree. Trim after you bump the shoulder back. But remember to watch your case length on that. Don't trim it too much.
Yeah, I mean, personally, every cartridge I reload, trimming's the last step. I mean, I'm going to do that after everything's been sized, literally right before I put a primer in the back of it and start loading. That's when I trim.
Yep.
And I got curious one time to see how much of a difference sizing made in the case overall length. And depending on your brass, you'd be surprised.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously, thicker brass or looser chamber is going to make more of a difference, but try that for an experiment sometime. Take a piece of brass right out of one of your firearms, measure it, size it, measure it again. And you'll see really quickly why that trimming needs to be the last step.
Sure, because the case neck is being stretched by the expander ball.
Uh-huh. And resizing is going to make all that brass want to go someplace, usually right into the neck length.
Yep.
Jason, how about you? When you're
resize first before you trim.
Yep.
Because you will absolutely change it.
Yep. It doesn't matter whether you're bumping the shoulder back or what you're doing. Always resize before you trim. The handgun, it's not going to make as much of a difference because, as we found from people who've actually studied this, you actually shrink the handgun brass over time versus the necked brass or shoulder.
Bottleneck cases, rifle ammo.
Bottleneck, where the neck actually grows because that's where the brass flows to. So, yeah, even with the shoulder trimmers, if you're not bumping the shoulder back first, you may not actually come up with anything to trim with the way it fits in there, if it fits at all. If you're not resizing the neck may not fit in there depending on how the trimmer is designed. With World's Finest Trimmer, you can still shove it in there anyway, but probably not going to trim anything.
Okay. Oh, if you don't mind, Mike, not for tonight, but if you don't mind, somebody came up, somebody off camera came up with a gun. Jim held on to a gun. Oh, wait a minute. It's an air pistol. How's my sight picture look?
Yeah.
Anyway, we have several requests to get back into handgun reloading from some of our listeners. I've gotten them on various venues. Some on with Wikipedia, MeWe, quite a few requests on private messages on Facebook. So I just, the listeners are talking about. Oh, look, Mike's got one too. Say something, Mike. You're all deaf. Himself muted and he's not listening.
You're right. I do have one. And
It's just an air pistol.
for it. And target.
You have what?
Ammunition.
Huh.
Hop darn, I've shot more than
A lot of ammo. I've got ammo. I got 6,000 rounds of ammo in that bottle.
You said earlier you
But-
weren't going to say how much.
Well, I think it's safe when we talk about people. But anyway, I actually use this handgun that Mike and I are both holding on to right now to train people, train newcomers to shooting. Okay, Mike, I shot it. Oh, I got a hole in my ceiling.
nice. Triple.
Yeah, anyway, dry fire. But anyway, so I actually use this for training people.
Why, Jim?
Why?
Yes.
Simple. Because I could teach them things like trigger discipline, look at my trigger finger, and I use it for teaching them sight picture, aligning the sights properly, front sights centered, level with the top of the rear sights. And also, because of the fact that it's single load, it has to be the safety has to be deactivated, cock it open, shove it back, load it this way, break open the barrel. It takes time. And the other thing is too, if I do get shot, it's going to hurt, but it probably won't be lethal. And it has all kinds of warnings stamped on it. Warning: before using, reader's manual available from Marksman. And it doesn't say this is not a toy.
Well, of course it would have warnings. That's from Huntington Beach, California.
The home of Feinstein and Pelosi.
Prop 65, baby.
Now, one of the nice things about this is, like, as everybody was watching, I was single loading with darts. However, notice that top hole, you can actually put a few BBs in there and continue to shoot shot after shot. So, and it has fake safety here too. So, the only thing it doesn't have is a grip safety.
Yeah, it's a little heavy compared. It's almost like a 1911.
Now, once it's cocked and loaded, then this safety works just fine. So that's the nice thing about that. But do we ever trust safeties? No. Safeties are a mechanical device. They can fail. So I want to teach everybody that from the beginning. But yeah, and this is great for trigger control, for learning how to shoot a handgun. Load up a pop can, load up this thing, and just sit there. And if you want, you can get one of those pellet traps or do all sorts of other stuff. And actually, as long as it doesn't irritate the wife, you can do it in the house, depending on local regulations. Yes, there are stupid places that do have regulations against shooting off air guns anywhere inside city limits. Yes, that includes these things. So yes, if I was in certain cities, what I was just doing, shooting the dartboard, would be illegal. But I live in free America, so I don't have that problem. Hey, me! So we can play cricket, the dart with an airsoft or a BB gun.
Just as a matter of information for our listeners, where do you get the darts?
They actually came with it. When I bought mine, it came with some BBs and came with the darts.
I see.
However, you can buy them off Crossman's website, and Walmart used to sell them, but I don't know if they still do. But most of your places that carry the air pistol usually carry that. I'm pretty sure you can probably order them from Airgun Depot or something like that too.
Okay. Thank you. Now I have a side cocking air rifle, and darts sound like might be an interesting proposition because we have a rabbit problem. And I was told tacitly it would be nice if the problem went away.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you can do your own homework and find some decent ones, like the ones that are Airgun Depot, you actually get ones that are featherback. They're the kicker is they're all designed. Any and all of the darts are designed for smoothbores.
Right.
So if you have a rifle with rifling, you can't use them because it spins them and then they don't fly very well. Not just how I know that. Just trust me. Why is practicing shooting important?
It's a perishable skill.
Yep. But why is it important? I mean, I'm reloading. Can I just make a load just for my sucky shooting?
Well, you could, but you can't. We're talking about performance. Phil and I were talking about making powder puff loads earlier, as opposed to making Irrgesplit and Laudenboomer within the limits, as opposed to making full house loads for training purposes. And I would rather have a full house load for training than and a powder puff for self-defense, as far as that goes.
But I do have an otherwise to that, because I was faced with the same decision for my wife. And what I came to realize was that shooting full house loads in that little bitty 14-ounce revolver, she was only getting about 2 or 3 cylinders full. And at that point, her flinch was so bad, there was no point continuing. And when you can only get 10 to 15 rounds out the barrel, it's going to take a whole lot of trips to the range to get proficient with a firearm. So in that case, I could easily make the case that a downloaded round that lets you shoot 30 or 40 rounds in a range trip is a huge help. And then work your way up.
I quite agree.
But I can't disagree with you that.
But she's not a strong woman. Let's face it. She's a lady. It's all that sort of thing. Delicate hands. Come on. We most of us guys work with our hands for a living, and we use our hands for building things, toughening up. We toughen our hands up just by life's experience. And I'm sorry, but if your wife is anything like mine, she's very delicate. She
would laugh at that, but point remains, she's not delicate when she's throwing a right hook at her husband.
Exactly.
But no, I mean, she deals with like 9mm semi-automatics very easily. I really think it was just a factor of too much muzzle energy and too light of a handgun.
Let me ask you this question, and I'm scared of the answer. Who chose her gun the first time? She did?
She did. I tried to talk her out of it. Didn't try. Okay. I didn't try to talk her out of it. When we were at that stage of her coming to grips with handguns, she had phenomenally little experience with semi-automatics. She had a lot more experience with revolvers. And, after she and I talked through the ups and downs of having a very small, lightweight revolver, she said, I want a lightweight weapon. And she was stuck on revolvers. So that's what we got her. She has since shot my semi-automatic CZ. She shot my father's Smith & Wesson Shield that I wound up buying for her. So, I mean, I think it was a comfort thing for her. She was adamant that she wanted a revolver because she was familiar with that manual of arms. And I'm not going to push a person to buy a handgun they're not comfortable with because you're never going to train with it.
I quite agree. Agree.
But I did warn her up front. I'm like, this is a very lightweight handgun, and you're going to feel the recoil. And it's going to be difficult to shoot.
Yep.
And now I am working on a very unhappy marriage learning to shoot this thing.
You might want to rephrase that.
Okay. me and that long double action pull, that 10-pound double action pull on a 14-ounce revolver, I'm having to develop a skill set I did not previously have. Because previous to this, I've shot double action, single action CZs, but you only have to pull the double action trigger one time. Now I'm having to learn it over and over and over, and it's a learning curve.
Sell the damn thing.
No.
Yeah, I know. I just muttered obscenities. Anyway, we're going back down that rabbit hole. We shouldn't be going down.
Something like that. Put it in the safe there. You're not. If you're training with it and it's a problem and you're not very effective with it, it's not a good carry gun. Not going to do well. Yay! Travis made it back after his computer. Potato. That's one of the reasons one of the reasons I don't understand the LCD. Yeah, it's okay to do. But I don't know how much they can breathe. So, and definitely with some of the lightweight revolvers, you never shoot full loads out of it. You just train with a 38s or like a lighter load. That's one thing. But if you can't even shoot well with the training loads, it's time to exhibit some wisdom and find something else to carry. That's when you get to that point in time. All right. Well, that's awesome.
Well, I guess also bear in mind that my definition of shooting well is probably a little bit more stringent than most. I can stack 4 rounds in about a 3-inch group at 7 yards.
Okay.
Most people would be happy with that. I'm not.
Right.
I mean, I think it's perfectly self-defense capable, but I'm not happy with that.
Right. I think that's rather large at 7 yards. 10 yards, maybe. If you're going to get serious about self-defense, is my audio any better, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay.
You won't be satisfied until you can empty the entire magazine into one hole at 7 yards.
Yeah.
I don't know if you need to be that serious, but 3 inches at 7 yards, I don't know. Not saying you'd ever be in a situation where you'd need that extreme of accuracy, but the whole entire idea is to not only stop the threat, but the secondary idea, unless you're certain people that think otherwise, is to mitigate possible damage to other people and things around. Now, if the only shot you have at stopping the threat is an ankle, because of where you're at, a 3-inch group at 7 yards means probably about half your shots are going to miss. And that's the thing you have to prepare for. Your goal is to stop the threat. If all you have is an ankle shot to stop the threat, make the ankle shot. But you have to be accurate enough to do it. 3 inches at 7 yards really isn't.
No, I won't disagree with that. Usually I spend time punching targets from 15 out to 25 yards. I don't have an issue hitting 6-inch plates at 25 yards with my CZs. I need more work on the revolver. I'm not ashamed to admit that a double action revolver is a completely different skill set to learn to shoot correctly, in my opinion.
It definitely is.
It shouldn't be. It ought to be exactly the same. But I'm going to tell you, there's nothing will make you realize your trigger work is sloppy faster than a double action only revolver.
Or double action only pistol.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the reasons I got the P250. And I had one in 9, and I just wanted something in 45. Everything in 45. So I traded my 9 for compact for a full-size 45. Even though it's got 10 rounds, I have other I have other firearms that are much better suited for carry that I wouldn't need to carry that particular. But everything I'm doing is helping with shooting. Is pulling that double action trigger is helping me with every time I fire my Ruger SR40, which is a single action, or my LC9S, which is a single action, or my Canik TV9S, or even my Smith & Wesson 686. But, you know, the idea is to learn how to be smooth with every trigger you pull and to be able to adjust on the fly whatever the trigger situation is. Because if you're serious about training for self-defense, you need to realize in the back of your mind there may be a chance that you have to pick up a firearm. And you can't guarantee that that firearm is going to be your perfect ideal firearm. So that's kind of, there's people that'll come from Gun Dudes and now Paracast used to talk about how they'd set down drills. Everybody takes their firearm, their handgun, they load it up, set it on the table. You take 5 steps back, whoever's the RSO blows the whistle, everybody runs up and grabs a different gun, 7 yards. So, it's one of those things. Not only are you adding stress into that situation, just running up and grabbing a gun you aren't necessarily with, but then you're also working on trying to adjust for the trigger. And I'm not a firearms instructor by any means. God, I'd love an option. So I'm just expunging, or I'm just sharing knowledge that I've gained. I've gone. Kind of one of those things. Now, back to other. Bill, when you're shooting, do you have practice loads? Do you load maybe a little lighter for you?
For me, no. Again, I light loaded that 38 special just to a bare minimum starting load. For most of my other ammunition, I'll actually shoot it side by side because I don't have a chronograph yet, but I'll shoot it side by side with off-the-shelf ammunition and just try to, am I getting the same recoil impulse from my ammunition I am to an off-the-shelf load? Because, if I'm trying to do something specific with a round, like max accuracy, max velocity, whatever, that's one thing. But for just off-the-shelf training ammo, I want it to mimic a factory load. I don't want to download it, but I'm not trying to make it race car hot either. My way of thinking was, sorry, Jim?
Go ahead, Phil.
Well, my way of thinking always was, what are you training to do? Most people that I know, at least, are going to be loading fairly hot boutique self-defense ammunition in their firearms for a defensive purpose, which I would recommend. But then I can't really advocate you use little powder puff loads when you're training for a defensive situation where you're going to be running much hotter ammo. In my wife's case, when I was loading that downloaded ammunition, I was also loading her gun with Hornady's reduced recoil ammunition. I want to say it was like a 90 grain bullet at some reasonable velocity, but I was intentionally trying to match my reloads to low recoiling ammunition for her firearm with the purpose of reducing recoil. But I wouldn't stick super hot fire breathers in the gun if all she's ever shot at is powder puffs. What's the point to me?
Well, my point was only going to be that if you want to take and duplicate factory loads, that's where your chronograph really comes in handy.
It's on the list with everything else.
Yep, that's it. That was the point I was going to make. That's all. But I agree. I subscribe to that theory very strongly about using strongly loaded ammunition, well-loaded ammunition to train with. Absolutely, I do. That's I shoot 145 grain, 150 grain bullets out of my 40, but those things are loaded up super hot. And not super hot out of the book, as in, they're right up there, stiff factory loads. Yeah, factory loads should run 180, 165, whatever the bullet weight is. But my recoil is right up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely don't, unless it's for competition. Then that's a different story.
Different purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Different story, different purpose, different task. So we're not saying don't download. We're just saying if you're training for self-defense, don't use download. Because you need to know that's one less variable in the system when crap goes wild and your adrenaline kicks in and everything else. And now, instead of holding the firearm like this, adrenaline kicks in and now you're going like this because you never really trained under stress. Now you're trying to shoot. Now you got a hot load, but your first shot goes wide. You try and bring it back down and you don't even get it back down on target again. Now your second shot goes wide. Pretty soon you're an empty mag and it's absolutely pointless. And now you're dead. Great problem.
The only other point I was going to add to you, what you said, Mike. Yeah, we want to shoot stiff loads for training purposes, but they also should be accurate, reasonably accurate loads, at least as accurate as factory ammo.
Yeah.
And I'll hedge that statement because I believe you. I agree with you 95% of the time. But my only hedge would be if you're working someone relatively new to shooting into defensive shooting. In that one case, only with the intention of eventually working up to full power loads could I then justify starting him off on something a little smaller. I mean, it's the same theory behind starting him off with a 22 LR pistol instead of going straight to 38 or 9mm. Download the round, get them familiar, get the fundamentals down, then move to the stiffer loads.
Well, Phil, that's all well and good as long as it's a family member. But if it's someone, your neighbor, 6 doors down, that training regimen is going to be on them. They need to understand it. You can do your best to make sure they understand it, but that's going to be on them to take and provide their ammunition, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't subscribe to reloading commercially.
Nope.
And there are people out there who do it, but
Yes.
you need to make sure that you know what you're doing beyond what we cover on this podcast. You got to have a lot more. Serious chunk of insurance, and most importantly, you're going to have to have given the money.
Yep. The analogy I always throw out to people is, how would you feel if you blew your friend's hands off?
Yep.
That's sounds harsh, but that's as bad as this could get. So I don't know if that's a rabbit hole I would go into just to try to do a buddy a favor.
Right. And the thing is if you load any ammunition and you sell it at all, you can wind up in trouble with the FDA.
And even if you just give it away, it wouldn't take a really well-educated lawyer to try to put it back on you, even if you just handed it to somebody.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I would suggest, the one thing I would suggest is get proper training. And listen to us and every other microphone commando knows what the hell they're talking about, because, my God, we're operating. But it doesn't mean squat. Spending time at the range poking holes in paper is not training. That's practice. Whether you figure out a way to use video communication to work with a trainer, or you go to a class, do training. If you think you have enough training, wrong. Go talk to the top trainers. They go get training every year. So, have I gone to any training classes lately? No. So I need one.
I attended training in 2013.
You need
And Yes, I do need a lot of training.
How about potty training? You do potty training?
No, I'm on occasion.
Depends. That should have been the correct answer. Come on, you're spoiling the jokes.
He. Anyway.
Yeah.
Jason, you haven't said much lately. Say something.
Boo.
Travis hasn't said anything at all.
Unmute
you
your
were
mic.
ugly.
No, you said Phil was ugly.
That's who I was talking to. That's all
Come
you
on,
got,
Travis. Jump in there, Travis.
Well,
What Phil do you mute his audio or video?
you guys care if I switch and show you something pretty cool that I picked up?
Sure.
So as you guys know, I sent you some pictures. I got a pretty good haul of some stuff.
Right.
I got a bunch of old powder cans.
Wow.
I don't know how old this one is, but I've never seen one this old.
Jim.
black
Jason,
powder?
Ken.
Is it black powder, Travis?
It says Hercules powder, black sporting, so I believe it was.
Probably right.
Does it say property of Paul Revere on it?
Hold that up again. I think I know that guy.
Well, you
Hey,
ought to. You
that's
two were
actually a
friends
picture of
growing up.
Jim. That's a picture of Jim on there.
Does it say JF on the back?
It could. Where's my Sharpie at? I'll get that thing going.
Yeah, I got a couple of cans heading your way, Mike.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate growing my collection of old stuff that I have around. All right. Prepare to Survive brought up a good thing in the chat. Says, should my 90-year-old neighbor that lives alone be forced to get some training before buying a gun? No. No one should ever be forced to get training before you buy a firearm. Period. It's always, like Kyle said, training should never be a requirement, but it's always a good idea. So that's kind of, one of those things that always comes up, and I'm glad that somebody in the chat brought it up. I am pro training all the way, but I refuse to support anyone that tries to make training mandatory or a condition to purchase a firearm or use a firearm. That is bullcrap. Nowhere in that 26 words does it say, oh yeah, and you have to have training. No way. It's just like people who bring up hunting. Nowhere in that 26 words does it say anything about hunting.
And, since we're already in the rabbit hole, I've actually had this conversation with people who have vehemently insisted training should be required, to which I've replied, well, here's something that usually shuts them up really quick. Okay, then why doesn't the federal government offer a tax credit for qualified training hours? I mean, how many more people would line up to go get firearms training if you could write that cost off your taxes every year? If they want to encourage it, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with using using our tax dollars to subsidize somebody else's firearms training. But I guess my point of view has always been, do they want to encourage, provide? Yeah, I'm kind of okay with all those items. But if you start talking about requiring, demanding, I get a little bit testy, personally.
I get crankier than a 3-year-old that just got his sucker taken away. So.
No, it's like the meme that keeps coming up. Every time somebody says, should the government do? And then it immediately says, 10th Amendment.
Ding, 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 ding.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
That comma is as important as the definition of well-regulated.
And infringed.
That comma is more important. Infringed is the key to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But your people are asking you about it. Infringed is the most important part. That comma is second, and the actual definition of well-regulated is third. The comma separates the first part from the second part. They're in the same overall amendment, but the first part doesn't have anything to do with the second part. Now, the second part is there so you can have the first part, but not vice versa.
Preaching to the choir, guys. Preaching to the choir. You notice that came off the cuff. I don't see how, I'm not looking at a computer screen or anything like that. I believe in the Second Amendment all the way, even though I did accidentally forget to use the word comma.
Well, no. When you're saying it, you pause like you normally would, but I was just emphasizing that. Something else.
And you probably wrote it, Jim. So
Well, he was there.
And you know, you talk about, thank you for such an honorable statement. My God, I've never had such a fine compliment from you, Mr. Trumbo. You actually called me a founding father of this beautiful country.
It's called sarcasm, Jim.
Thank
No,
you, sir.
I just said you're old
That's
enough
for you,
to
Phil.
have wrote it. That's all.
I got you, Phil.
Don't let your head.
I don't think Trumbo does heartfelt, emotional compliments. With
Founding
sarcasm.
He called me a founding father. He called
No,
me
he-
a founding father. How nice.
No, what he called you was a fossil.
I choose not to take it that way.
Okay. Jim has taken his ball
Remember-
and gone home.
You cannot insult somebody if they choose not to be insulted. Remember that.
But Jason will try.
Jason is an insult.
On your previous comment, Jim,
Yes, sir.
you teach the snowflakes that.
Oh. You mean amongst this troop of refuge we have all five of us right here? You know. Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
No, I was saying about it's only offensive.
I know, Mike. I know. You have to choose to be offended.
That's right.
And what are we offended about today?
What have you got?
I was gonna.
9mm versus 40 cal.
Yeah, exactly.
40 is the devil.
Oh my God! You talk about start that thing all over
Okay.
again.
Okay.
40 is the answer. 40 is
Listen,
the answer.
listen.
40 is the answer.
9mm
40.
Listen,
girls, Phil.
But
Thank
there
you
is-
for clarifying.
but there is
Your
nothing on earth,
Reference.
nothing on earth more frustrating than pulling a load of 9mm brass out of a freaking dry tumbler and finding one that has decided to have relations with a 40 cal case. That's where I'm coming from. I
That's
have
just
nothing
because
wrong.
the
I have.
nines-
I
That's
have-
just because the nines are trying to grow up, Phil. That's all.
See, Phil, that sounds like a you problem, not an us problem. But-
yeah, well, that's not the only pairing. It just happens to be the one that happens in my range the most often because I still
You
have
wanna
some
know what the
insane
truth- the
knuckleheads that
real
want to shoot
pairing
40
is?
Smith.
You want to know what the real menage a trois pairing is? 9 inside of 40 inside of 45, 380 or 22 inside the 9.
Been there.
I've had
I haven't pulled all that off. I have had a 22 inside of a 9 inside of 40, and as cheap as I am, it all went in the scrap bin.
it.
When I pulled that out, I was like, nope, not today. All of it in the scrap bin.
Travis, what's your take? 9 or 40?
9, 9 all the way.
Here's one.
Nine.
Here's
Nine,
one of God's
nine,
children.
9. N-E-I-N. 9.
Jawohl.
Oh Lord.
You know what my answer to that is?
Don't
Both.
care.
All of the above.
Uh huh. No, I love 40 caliber. I just like it when it's a little bit longer and metric.
Oh, you like 10 millimeter, huh?
I want a 10 mil. I want a 10 millimeter.
Yep.
I want lots of things though. I want all the guns.
Exactly. There's no such thing as too many.
Yeah, I'll go with that. So, do we have any other listener questions or any other topics?
Nothing for tonight.
Oh God, the listener, the everyone started a freaking caliber, like 4 caliber wars in the chat.
Yep. Now look what you've.
That's on Jason. Jason started Caliber War.
Why 10 mm? Why not go with 44 mag?
44 mag versus 444 Marlin.
I haven't had a chance to play with the 444 Marlin.
444 Marlin versus 500 Smith & Wesson.
There you
I
go.
haven't had a chance to play the 500 Smith & Wesson either.
Well,
No one around here shoots any friggin' revolvers bigger than a 44 Magnum, apparently.
apparently you live in the wrong state.
No, just lots.
Ooh, that was a well-aimed low blow.
But I can have a 30-round magazine with my AR.
Bite me.
Good one, Phil. You got him good.
Was that a little bit of a sucker punch?
I have probably, I don't know how many 30-round mags for my AR.
Lots.
I don't have enough, but I know I've got more than most.
Would Marissa say you have enough?
Hey, she'd say I have too much. She'd say I have too much. But anyway, we got any more stuff from the listeners, Mike?
Not at the current moment. So let's wrap this pig up and put a bow on it. Trying to look not so creepy on the camera, but that's okay. So, I think. Oh, hold on. Let me fix that. Oops. Wrong button. There, that's better. Now I don't look so creepy on the camera. So, I don't even get a laugh out of that. What the crap?
I laughed.
You got a face for radio, yeah. We all agree with that.
So, Jim, when you were young, I know that's a long time to remember back.
Holy crap, Mike.
Did
Dude, don't ask questions like that.
did your mom tie a brontosaurus rib around your neck so the time?
Well,
She had to so I could play with Uncle T-Rex. You've been saving that one for a while, Mikey.
Maybe not. Never know. Nobody knows what's gone inside the head of mine, and frankly, I don't think you want to because it's kind of a scary place. Oh, whoops. Okay.
Phil's dying.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I did text Kel earlier. When I finally get the show posted 2 weeks ago, when I had to leave, he was looking in the beer fridge, and he said that there was only shandies and ciders. The last time I checked, that says red ale on it, so like off, Kel.
oh my.
So anyway, less people think all I have is fruity beers.
Well, that's all.
That's a pretty deep subject, Jason. I don't think it's deep enough to hold all the bullcrap, though. And on that note, if you're shopping Brownells or Amazon for various fun things, or even not so fun things if it's Amazon, swing by firearmsradio.tv and hit up the affiliate links. It doesn't really take you any extra time. Well, maybe it does. I don't know. I suppose. depending on how computer literate you might or might not be. So that's not a fair statement, but it won't cost you any extra money. Yeah. And it helps out the network. Also want to take time to thank everybody who tunes in every week, either in the chat or when I post the audio. Thank you very much. Special thank you to all of our Patreons. Oh, by the way, you know that new patch, that new reloading patch that Jake's putting out? I'm sending one to every Patreon. So Jake's shipping those, so those will get there in a timely manner, just so everybody knows.
Is that the Circle of Life one?
Yes.
Cool.
So you're not a Patreon, you ain't getting. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, you are.
Whatever.
Dang it. I forgot you are a Patreon. Yes. So thank you, Jason, twice. Once for contributing to the show, and two for the show.
Yes, sir.
Constantly giving Jim a crap. Because somebody's got it. Might as well be all of us.
Might as well.
That's his major contribution, is giving me sass.
If you're good at something, stick with it.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. Thank you to everybody who is a Patreon. It's awesome, and we greatly appreciate it. And no, I haven't gotten the Dylan 650 yet, so we will be doing that this fall. It's still summer right now, so September, October probably is when we'll get the XL6 or the 650 XL and do some testing on that and set it up and have fun with it. And we'll give it away. All right. Everybody loves Jim, so yes, we appreciate that. John says just fill out a 4473, the patch to send to your Cali FFL. So yeah. So Jason,
Thanks for the recommendation, John. I appreciate it. Very helpful.
So yeah, Jason, you'll have to get that information for me and take care of it for you. And don't worry, we'll get the low magazine capacity version for you.
I can't have the 30-round patch.
Nope, no 30-round patches for you.
That's pretty severe when a patch requires a 4473.
Well, it could be worse. It could be New York where they won't even let them have the patch. Because the patch might actually have real ammunition and it might actually fire all that stuff. Careful. Anyway, on that note, keep that brass shiny.
And keep your powder dry.
It's not a matter of if, but when.
Buy it cheap and stack it deep.
And squeeze.
Jim.
Lost Jim.
And squeeze.
Yep, I think we just lost Jim.
Yep, we lost Jim.
And squeeze that trigger.
Don't yank that trigger.
Don't yank it. It'll go all over the place. Oh, look at what mess you made. Hey, he's back. Where'd you go, Jim? No, I guess he's gone. All right, Jim. On that note, folks, have a great night.